What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action. And this week we've got another Apex card, UFC Vegas 81, featuring a battle between two featherweights in Sodiq Yusuff as he takes on Edson Barboza. So a battle between two strikers here, primarily a prospect in Sodiq Yusuff with a lot to prove and a lot more career ahead of him. He takes on the very veteran, 12-year UFC veteran Edson Barboza, one of the best strikers in the game, both at lightweight and now at featherweight. So I can't wait for that. Potentially 5 rounds of action there at 145. We still have 12 fights on this card, a couple of debuting fighters on the prelims, and some emerging prospects on this card as well. They even have that rematch between Edgar Chairez and Daniel Da Silva on here from a month ago as well. So a lot of fun to be had. I even see some betting spots that have presented themselves. I already did my full card, or my main event breakdown for Sodiq Yusuff and Edson Barboza earlier in the week, so you got the pick for that one. But I will quickly do an overview and breeze through this 12-fight card. So despite all of the short notice cancellations and replacements for UFC 294 that have shown up in the past day or two, we still have all 12 fights for this fight card. So we can quickly go over these. Again, I will be back in about a day or two just to drop that short best bets and props video I always drop once I've finalized my betting action for this card. But for now, we can go from bottom to top and talk about the pick and prediction for each one. So without further ado, we can start at the prelim opener of Ashley Yoder taking on Emily Ducote at women's strawweight. Now, this is a fairly simple pick just because Ashley Yoder has been off for 2 years' time now, since July of 2021, where she lost to Jinyu Fry. That was the last time we saw Ashley Yoder, who is 8-8 as a professional, riding a 2-fight losing streak, and she is 3-7 in the UFC overall. So it's hard to believe that she even has a UFC contract still. I mean, she's lost 4 of her last 5, and really her only path to victory here would be to get some sort of submission victory, get this fight to the mat. But overall, Ashley Yoder is 35 years old. She's, I think she started a family in the past couple of years, which is maybe why she's been laid off. She had a fight scheduled earlier this year against Vanessa Demopoulos she pulled out of. So she's got a size advantage and a UFC experience advantage in this matchup. That's about all I would give her against Emily Ducote, who's 6 years younger at 29 years old. And although Emily Ducote herself is a losing UFC record at 1-2, only winning her debut against Jessica Penne, which was an impressive one, Ducote still has 4-4 as her record in Bellator, 4-1 record in Invicta. So high-level opposition overall, but she's coming off of back-to-back losses against Lupita Godinez in a competitive match and a pretty non-competitive match against Angela Hill. But Emily Ducote has very comprehensive striking, good boxing, good output. Obviously, the devastating leg kick she destroyed Jessica Penne with. And her wrestling is solid as well, and so is her BJJ game. She's a black belt in BJJ, and she's shown that she's got submission ability with 4 submissions over her 12 fights. So I like Emily Ducote wherever this fight goes, but she's a minus 350 favorite. Ashley Yoder about plus 275, the underdog right now. It makes sense, but the one thing I don't like from Ducote is she did show in that fight against Angela Hill that when things weren't going her way early in round 1, she pretty much just checked out for rounds 2 and rounds 3. Now, that might be a little bit harsh just because Angela Hill is such a seasoned veteran of the UFC, and she can make a lot of people look like their game plan is just not effective. But still, I mean, for a minus 350, that was a little bit hard to see. That still sticks out in my mind, not wanting to trust her. But you look on the other side of the coin here, Ashley Yoder just not really bringing much to the table, especially with this long layoff, especially at 35 years old. So give me Emily Ducote to strike her up on the feet, probably even take the fight to the mat and get control time there. So I'll pick Ducote to win by decision, but I don't have anything betting-wise on this fight. Moving up the prelims to the bantamweight fight between Haley Alateng and Chris Gutierrez, and this is a crazy matchup simply because of where the betting odds are at for this fight. I was very confused by where the line was at, and I'll just spoil it right off the bat. I've got a 1-unit bet on Haley Alateng to win at plus 300 because BetOnline also had Chris Gutierrez at like minus 400. Some books I've even seen higher than that. It's slightly fluctuating and moving back down, but still around minus 350 for Chris Gutierrez is an insane number. Like, I would line Chris Gutierrez as the favorite here, maybe around the minus 200-ish mark, but Minus 400 or more is insane for this fight. I'm not sure where they're getting that from. Chris Gutierrez is the bigger man. He's the true bantamweight, whereas Haley Alateng a little bit shorter with less reach, and he has come up in his career in the UFC from flyweight, but he's been looking pretty good at bantamweight, and Haley Alateng would be 5-1 in the UFC if not for that fence grab point deduction against Gustavo Lopez. Other than that, his only loss is to Casey Kenny, who is another good kicker. Chris Gutierrez has got the striking output, a very good kicking game, and he's got the advantage that way. He's even faced a higher level of competition, so I can see why Gutierrez is the favorite here, but not by this much. I mean, Gutierrez still has some defensive problems. He still has maybe a questionable durability about him coming off of that loss to Pedro Munoz. No shame there. Pedro is a very tough guy and a veteran guy. But Haley Alateng is still right around like 30 or 31 years old. He's got very slick boxing counters. If he can counter the kicker and catch Chris Gutierrez off balance when he throws those kicks, I mean, Haley Alateng has got a very nice lead left hook. He's got very nice 3-2 counters that busted up the nose of Chad and Hellinger in his last fight. He knocked out Kevin Kroom, a much taller man, with that big overhand in like less than a minute. But overall, Haley Alateng, his base is freestyle wrestling, so he knows how to level change and secure some top control time in key moments. So just in the sake of the money line being so far off, just in the case of this fight, heavily favored to go like maybe minus 270 or so, over 2.5 rounds. At these numbers, I mean, I got to take Haley Alateng to just steal some rounds with the wrestling, steal some rounds with some big moments, and also potentially just get, just a weird scorecard going here in a fight that, Chris Gutierrez usually makes these decisions very close. So all that considered, the money line is way off. This is a mathematical play. I got to take Haley Alateng to score the decision win. If you just want you want to get greedy and just take Haley Alateng by decision, that's at like plus 500 or so. I think the money line is definitely good enough if you can still get a hold of that plus 300 number or anything over plus 250. Alateng is a tough guy. He keeps moving forward. I think he gets the job done by decision here. Another bantamweight bout up next, this time in the women's division between Irina Alekseeva as she takes on the debuting Melissa Dixon. We've got the Russian Alekseeva making her second walk to the UFC cage after a successful round 1 submission against Stephanie Egger in her debut. And we're taking on the English fighter in Melissa Dixon, who is 5-0 as an undefeated professional coming out of 2 back-to-back victories in Aries FC. For being new to the UFC, both women, oddly enough, they're both coming from a grappling base, and they both don't mind striking, especially early in their fights. But oddly enough, for being new to the roster, Irina Alekseeva is 33 years old. Melissa Dixon in her debut is 32 years old. So not the youngest prospects going. They definitely have to make an impact now rather than later. But yeah, I mean, both coming from a grappling background and both have some submission potential. But I gotta say, Irina Alekseeva, I think she'll have the upper hand in this matchup early in round 1, but I don't see her lasting very long into the fight if it goes past round 1. Round 2, round 3, I would certainly see going in the favor of Melissa Dixon. We saw Alekseeva's debut against Stephanie Egger, where I did not expect her to win that fight, and I just thought her regional tape looked terrible. She fights with this very awkward upright style with her hands down, comes forward very aggressively with very little respect for her opponent's striking, and she throws strikes at a crazy pace in round 1 with full effort, and they're not even like the best strikes. They come from weird angles since her hands are down. They do damage when she connects, but they're really like, there's no hip rotation. They're all arm punches, and she just looks very awkward and hittable. But if she can be the aggressive person and just bully her opponents backwards, she can kind of have some success like we saw against Stephanie Egger early in that fight. Melissa Dixon, much more technical of a fighter, but she is eager to let her opponents, lead the dance, and she can look to counter-strike. And in her last fight in Aries FC against Daria, she really ate a lot of punishment early in that fight, and it was Daria slowing down. It was Melissa Dixon managing to end up on top position and win the fight via ground and pound, and kind of an awkward stoppage. It was at the last second of round 1, and Melissa Dixon just kept on firing shots, and I think Daria actually was trying to ride out the clock and make it to the bell in between rounds, and the referee just kind of looked at it as if she gave up and stopped defending and stopped the fight. But either way, I mean, even Dixon's fight before that one against Rizlan Zuak, She was able to jump on her back from a standing position and actually counter a lot of those judo throws against Rizlan there. So she does show a good ability to capitalize on her opponent's mistakes. She shows some pretty good cardio, good takedown ability, and like I said, the technique of her striking is better for Dixon. So I'll take her to win this fight. Where the money line is at, Dixon is a minus 150 in her debut. Irina Alekseeva is the plus 130 underdog. So I got to take the better looking fighter in Dixon, and I even do like sprinkling her round 2, round 3 finish props in this matchup, you know. So whether or not you want to take the stab on a 5-0 women's fighter with not the most experience, 32 years old, coming in here in a debut spot. Normally not what I would bet on the money line as a favorite, but yeah, I think if this goes to round 2, round 3, I think Dixon could take her out inside the distance. So give me the better fighter down the stretch in Melissa Dixon. Moving up to the lightweight division now, we got Terrence McKinney taking on a short notice debuting fighter in the name of Brendan Marotte. So Terrence McKinney, we know very well. Brendan Marotte, we do not know all that well. But Terrence McKinney, of course, I mean, the definition of a kill or be killed fighter, the definition of under 1.5 rounds or bust type of fighter. But in those 7.5 minutes, the guy is amazingly well-rounded, strikes with insane power and versatility, usually out of that southpaw stance. He's throwing high kicks, very powerful punches he comes down with after the kick, flying knees and things like that. He just stalks you down with crazy power. He's big for the weight class, and he's still young at 29 years old. This guy's got really good wrestling and grappling as well. It's just if he leaves round 1 and he's emptied his gas tank unsuccessfully, not finding that finish, he can melt and end up getting his back taken and lose by submission like he did against Nazim Sadikov earlier this year. He could eat the flying knee when he was backed up against Ismail Bonfim earlier this year. But more likely in this matchup, he can treat Brendan Marotte like he did Mike Breeden back in August, which was a typical Terrence McKinney win, just throwing high kicks, throwing knees, landing with most of his punches, and melting Mike Breeden to get that round 1 standing TKO stoppage. So it only took him like 85 seconds to score that round 1 KO, and that's likely what happens here. When I watched the tape for Brendan Marotte, who's a New England cartel athlete, so trains with a good team in the East Coast. He's been in CES and Combat Zone, which are common regional promotions for people in that region of the States. Brendan Marotte, we're missing a little bit of data because he did score a round 1 submission win, kind of a club and sub victory back in August. But I can only find the finishing sequence to that fight online on Brendan's Instagram. And then his fight earlier this year against Dion Rubio, which is a round 2 knockout. I couldn't see that fight in Combat Zone either. That was back in March. Before that, he was off for like 2 years. And the last fight we could find was against Dan Dubuque, which is a split decision win in Combat Zone back in 2020. So in that fight, you're going to see not the fastest striker, not the most athletic-looking Brendan Marotte, who didn't have the best striking defense or takedown defense in that match. So not a whole lot to like when considering, if you're going to bet against Terrence McKinney, you want to see a guy who's got very good toughness and very good cardio, so that you can survive round 1 against McKinney and take over in round 2 and round 3 to beat him. I'm not seeing any of that from Brendan Marotte, and on short notice, I don't like this matchup for him. So the typical things are in play for Terrence. Terrence round 1, Terrence inside the distance. Combine that with the under 1.5 round mark. I mean, those are the common things, but where the money line is at, I think we're looking at like minus 500 or so for Terrence. Yeah, minus 525 for Terrence McKinney, plus 400 for Brendan Marotte. I mean, honestly, seems about right. It's just, how much do you want to get invested on a minus 525 price tag on McKinney, who, he's going to empty out his gas tank in round 1, and you're probably going to be left with, sweating bullets if this makes it to round 2 or round 3. So, yeah, give me Terrence McKinney to win here. I think he does so by knockout in round 1. Moving back up to women's bantamweight for this next fight, which features yet again another debuting fighter. We've got Ravena Oliveira making her debut against Tainara Lisboa, who's making her second walk to the UFC cage. Tainara Lisboa and Ravena Oliveira are both Muay Thai specialists, and they're both Brazilian. So it's a battle between two women with similar backgrounds, but I would say Tainara Lisboa has got a lot better experience and a lot more credentialed Muay Thai experience, even having fought Valentina Shevchenko back in her Muay Thai days, like about 10 years ago. So don't get me wrong, Lisboa did get bullied in that matchup, but still, Valentina Shevchenko a long time ago, Norma Dumont a while back. She has been in there against some UFC level competition. And Lisboa is coming off of a very impressive debut against Jessica Rose Clark, where she was able to score a round 3 submission win. So showing some versatility to her game, even though her background for Lisboa is Muay Thai, and I think she's got the better Muay Thai in this fight. She has shown that she can lean on her grappling to win bouts as well, which she's shown at least a couple of times now. 3 times she's won by submission, a couple of arm triangle chokes, and now that round 3 rear naked choke over Jessica Rose Clark. So it's translating even to the UFC level, even though Jessica Rose Clark is not, not the highest level of marker for where your success might lie if you beat her by submission. Still pretty impressive. Under the bright lights of a debut, she got that done. So against Ravena Oliveira, if you want to look up tape on Ravena Oliveira, her some of her videos also go by Ravena Canuti, which is, I think, her nickname, I guess, according to Tapology. I mean, just not a lot to like from the tape that you can see from her. Not the highest level of competition faced. I mean, most of her opposition losing records or debuting fighters, and then you see Ravena Oliveira pretty much not show their striking any success, so I don't really like Ravena Oliveira's defense. She's pretty much all offense with her striking, no defense at all. But she's able to get these bums to the ground and then start raining down ground and pound from either half guard or mount. And that's how she's scoring these, either round 2 or round 1 TKO stoppages. So, yeah, I mean, just not a lot of data to go off of in her last couple of fights in 2023. Wasn't really able to find those bouts, but I just got to go with Tenera Lisboa in this one. And the money line where it's at right now, we're looking at Lisboa as a minus 310 favorite. So, I think that's partially because most people aren't able to find information on Oliveira. And you're just going to assume that the woman who's beaten Jessica Rose Clark is the more complete fighter. And I think that's totally justified here. Better competition faced, more well-rounded game. And again, the few fights I was able to find from Ravena, not impressed with her defense or her skills at all. So, yeah, give me Lisboa to go in there and get the job done, but not much I want to do with the minus 310 favorite here. Maybe the inside the distance would be the way to go since, neither woman has actually seen the scorecards in the fight, in a victory anyways. And we move on to the featherweight division, a very fun fight between Darren Elkins and TJ Brown. And this is usually this is a very good matchup for Darren Elkins and TJ Brown, a guy who can get put on his back and reversed easily, especially as the fight goes into round 2 and round 3, a guy that can fade in TJ Brown. And Darren Elkins is a guy who can use his good wrestling, toughness, and veteran savvy, potentially even his submission potential, to win this fight in the later parts of it or even take a decision. It's just, I think he's too far past his prime. He's 39 years old. TJ Brown's still 33. And I think TJ Brown's going to have such a speed and power advantage in the striking early that I think he could even take out Darren Elkins in the early portion of this fight under the 1.5 round mark, or potentially just do enough damage, lacerate the face of Darren Elkins, and win this fight by decision if need be. But the money line is at minus 180 TJ Brown. A bit too wide for me to trust TJ Brown on the money line, and Darren Elkins at plus 155 is a tempting underdog. It's just, I think, at 39, been out of the cage for about 10 or 11 months. I think it's just too much to ask for him at this point in his career. I think TJ Brown's going to use his wrestle boxing style, his underrated kickboxing early in this fight, where he was even giving Bill Algeo trouble in round 1 last time we saw him fight. I just think it's too much for Elkins at this point. So give me TJ Brown to probably score an early finish in this bout. But Darren Elkins is tough, man. Like, it's almost like it's too much of a favorite price tag to bet on TJ Brown, who makes a lot of mistakes as the fight goes on. But it's just not enough of an underdog price for me to take the stab on Darren Elkins at plus 155 for as slow as he's been looking early in the fight. So give me TJ Brown to score an early finish or just take a decision win that he'll cruise to after having a very strong start. Moving up to the main card, we've got a bantamweight bout between Christian Rodriguez and Cameron Saaiman, a prospect versus prospect battle here at 135. The 9-1 Christian Rodriguez takes on the 9-0 Cameron Saaiman. And this is a very fun matchup, and the money line is pretty close in this one as well. Minus 145 for Christian Rodriguez right now, plus 125 the underdog Cameron Saaiman. Money's been fluctuating. It looked like there was some money that came in on Christian Rodriguez as the week has gone on, and now it's come back with more money being on Cameron Saaiman. closing this money line up a little bit. Yeah, I mean, Cameron Saaiman's a guy with a very strong striking output, very technical kickboxing, and I like his activity, and his submission defense has looked okay. He looks like a very high IQ, very strong fighter here, and a lot of potential to grow. But I think at this point, Christian Rodriguez is the guy that's more developed, and his striking is very, very good. Coming out of the Midwest at Rufus Sport, very strong striking gym, but he's got just that grit and that ability in the grappling to give people problems there as well. So just I like how well-rounded he is and how efficient he is in both areas of the game, stand-up and grappling. So that's really the difference maker here. I think Cameron Saaiman does a great job of blending his skill set together, and I think at his age he's going to have a lot of room to improve. But I think Christian Rodriguez is just the more developed product at this point. Seems like a very calm and high IQ fighter in his own right. I'd say on the feet, the activity and just like the striking variety of Cameron Saaiman might edge the fight to him if it stays there, but he ends up on the mat in a lot of spots so far, even against Obi-Wan Shinobi the Pillow, Stephen Kozlow as a debuting fighter that I don't think is all that great. Ended up on the mat with him fighting off submissions for round one. Ended up on the mat against his last opponent in Terrence Mitchell before ending up in a dominant position there. And in Christian Rodriguez, who just came off of that upset victory over Raul Rosas Jr., able to withstand the barrage of grappling in round one, able to think his way out of bad positions, then come back in round two and round three and employ his own game plan. I just like Christian Rodriguez a lot in this spot. So yeah, I'm going to take him to win. I already have a bet on his money line at minus 130 for 1.5 units. And I think there's a good potential that Christian Rodriguez could end up either getting a club and sub victory or just taking this fight to the mat and getting a submission win on his own merit just with the BJJ. I mean, he's a guy who even had Jonathan Pierce in guillotine and armbar trouble in their fight in his short notice debut. So yeah, give me Christian Rodriguez to, again, stay safe on the feet, have his moments there, but do his better work in the grappling. Moving up to a 130 catch weight between these two flyweights. We've got Edgar Chairez rematching Daniel Da Silva. We've got Edgar Chairez at minus 340, the favorite here. He was the favorite last time by quite a bit. Now it's even more inflated since he basically won his last fight against Daniel Da Silva by standing guillotine in round one. So my prediction does not change. I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this one. What happened last time at Noche UFC was Daniel Lacerda actually looked like he was measuring himself a little bit more, not going too crazy. He was an aggressive striker. He was scoring takedowns, and then eventually that takedown got countered and he got his neck snatched up. But since his arm went limp and Chris Taglioni stopped the fight, he popped right back up, still conscious. They called it a no contest, but I mean, what do you expect? Chris Taglioni saw his arm go limp. He saw the cervical spine being pretty much snapped in that guillotine position. So once the fighter appears to lose consciousness, I mean, horrible things to the spine could happen if the ref does not break that one up. So I don't blame him for that. I think it should have been a rightful win for Chairez by submission, which is still sitting around like plus 175 to plus 225 on some books. I think that's not a bad bet. Anything with Edgar Chairez inside the distance. The guy's got competent Muay Thai, which he showed against Lacerda in their first fight. He's got a good ground game, which he showed as well. And his first round is usually one of his better rounds in fights. And he's got some late finish potential and experience going the distance. So I like everything about Chairez's game in this fight against Lacerda, who's 0-4 in the UFC, could be 0-5. And it's like, how many times do you give this guy a chance to right his wrongs? So I can see this in the terms of the money line. Like, you're looking at Daniel Lacerda at plus 280. Even if you consider Daniel Lacerda in round one at plus 280, that seems like maybe there could be some inherent value there, but I just don't trust the guy's gas tank. I don't trust his game planning, and I don't trust his defense. So give me Edgar Chairez just like last time, probably to win by another submission here. Moving up to middleweight for the next fight between Michel Pereira and Andre Petroski. Petroski is filling in on short notice here for Marc-Andre Barriault, and Michel Pereira is actually moving up to 185 for the first time in the UFC. He's coming up from 170 after some botched weight cuts there, and obviously it was a tough weight cut. The guy comes in great shape, shredded. Not even sure how this guy at 6'1" and his muscularity ever made 170, but he missed it badly earlier this year against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. The fight was called off, and now he's being forced up to 185, where he probably should have been the whole time. But, you know, he's got a well-rounded game, some BJJ skills, but mostly a very flashy, dynamic striker with a lot of kicks, elbows, flying knees, and things like that. High output striker, and both of these guys, honestly, their cardio has been a little bit shifty as the fight has gone into round 2, round 3. But I think whoever is able to keep the fight in their realm of expertise, if Michel Pereira keeps it on the feet, I think his cardio looks better in round 2, round 3. And if Petroski can keep this fight on the mat and grapple for large periods of time, I think his cardio looks better than Pereira's in round 2, round 3. So whoever's having to fight to get out of their opposite realm of expertise, I think will struggle quite a bit. We could see a late finish potential from Pereira on the feet with a knockout in round 2, round 3, or we could even see a submission from Petroski if he can get this fight to the mat. Now, Pereira's got something in the stats going for him. He's got like a 90+% takedown defense rating, but at welterweight, if you look at the guys he's fought, they're not really guys who are trying to wrestle him all that much, and the ones that have really didn't get a good opportunity to do so in the early parts of the round where they could get a lot of control time, like the Ponzinibbio fight, you know, scoring takedowns towards the end of the round. Now, I really find it hard to believe that Petroski won't be able to get a hold of Michel Pereira. Again, apex cage, smaller octagon, and take him down. It's just, can he hold him down without Pereira popping back up to his feet or scrambling out of a position? Because I really do think highly of Petroski's grappling. I just don't think highly of his striking. It's very, big overhands and things like that, very basic, predictable things, telegraphed strikes that I think Pereira is just competent enough to stay out of the way of. But man, where the money line is at, it's just hard not to think that there's value on the side of Petroski here. Minus 210 for Pereira, plus 180 for Petroski. Pereira's a guy that just doesn't make very good decisions. He's at a new weight class. He's fighting an opponent he did not expect to face. And he's a guy who's had cardio issues in the past. And the guy who I really do think in the UFC at this level, his grappling defense is something that still needs to be tested quite a bit. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the underdog in this one to pull it off. I'm not sure if my money's going to go behind this one. If anything, maybe I would sprinkle in on like Petroski round 2, round 3 sub. But where the money line is at, I like violence probably more than anything in this matchup. The under 2.5 or the fight doesn't go to decision. So you get all of round 3 for a potential finish with that fight doesn't go prop. But yeah, I'll pick Petroski as an underdog. I'll lean on him. I think there's still some potential in his game, even as the slightly older man here, that we haven't seen. So yeah, give me Petroski to win and pull off a round 3 submission. Another super close match up next that I've gone back and forth on between Jonathan Martinez and Adrian Yanez at bantamweight. Now this is a fight between two strikers, but very different strikers, right? Jonathan Martinez, more of the well-rounded MMA striker. He's got very good kicks, very good punches, good knees up close. And if he can keep this fight at distance against more of a boxer and a close-range striker in Adrian Yanez, I think he will do very well in this matchup. So the range control, the distance management from Martinez is going to be key. Keep this fight at range and just outpoint and out-kick Adrian Yanez here. Now, Yanez wants to do the opposite, close the distance, use his close-range boxing skills, be the aggressor and cut off the cage against the elusive striker in Martinez. And that way he could potentially land the more devastating strikes. And he does have a lot of power in his hands, and he really does cause a lot of damage too. You looked at the eye of Rob Font in his last fight. Even though he lost the fight by early knockout, he was doing some damage on Rob Font, who's a pretty high-level guy. But the other thing that plays into this fight is Jonathan Martinez does have a pretty good offensive grappling game. He showed takedowns against Said Nurmagomedov, the ability to out-scramble him in some key spots and end up in dominant positions on the mat. Yeah, so, I mean, I just think that against a more of a one-dimensional boxer type of striker here in Yanez, I got to take Martinez to win, but Martinez has a way about him where sometimes he'll be doing very, very well, winning, much of the first part of a round, and then he gives it away by eating a big strike, getting knocked down. His durability isn't something that I rate very highly, so it could be a battle of, the minutes for Martinez versus the moments of Yanez. we see sometimes rounds are even scored for people who have that devastating power like Yanez to cause a laceration or shut the eye of Martinez in this fight. So it's a very close fight. The money line reflects that. We're looking at a fight that was a pick-em price tag, and the money line still is 50-50. It's still minus 110 apiece. So if you got a stronger read on this fight than I do, you could get a pretty cheap price on the fighter here if you see more than a 50-50 chance for each guy to win. I'm going to go with Martinez. I think he's got more of an MMA game with the kicks, the knees, the grappling offense here. And I think he's faced a higher level of competition to come out on the other side of it. But would not be surprised if Yanez puts the hands on his chin and is able to steal rounds with big moments. But give me Martinez to win by decision. Co-main event up next between two very talented flyweights in Jennifer Maia as she takes on Viviane Araujo. A pretty fun co-main event, honestly. High level because we've got Jennifer Maia, who's been around for a long time, pretty much the title gatekeeper at this point and a former title challenger herself, taking on Viviane Araujo, who's a fellow Brazilian, very well-rounded athlete, very athletic for even 36 years old at this point. And she was a former, 5-round main event headliner last year against Alekseeva in a fairly competitive matchup there, but ultimately a loss. And Jennifer Maia coming off of back-to-back wins, whereas Viviane Araujo, she's coming off of back-to-back losses. So, this is a close-ish fight on paper, but I think it all comes down to the better defensive qualities of Jennifer Maia. She's got very good boxing, some of the better boxing in the UFC women's divisions, high output striker over 3 rounds. She's got great cardio, great experience, and great durability and toughness as well. She has not been finished in over 10 years by submission or knockout. And most of her fights do go all the way to the scorecards here. So who's the better decision winner? It's probably going to be Jennifer Maia at this point. Now, there is on paper, there's the ability for Viviane Araujo to score some takedowns and steal the fight that way with the grappling. She's even a very athletic and fast striker, so she could sting on the feet with some strikes, a level change, get the takedown on Maia, and ride out some rounds to victory there. But she does tend to slow down as the fight goes on. Her defense falls apart as the fight goes on, and so does her output. So I got to take the more consistent fighter in Jennifer Maia, who is going to be a little bit of I'd say a little bit of a speed disadvantage early in round 1, but I still think her boxing counters are very good. I think defensively she's very good, and we're looking at Viviane Araujo, who, dare I say it's probably a bad look to get dropped in round 2 against Amanda Ribas with a jab in her last fight earlier this year. Just things like that in her defense. She's very good offensively, throws very strong and technical strikes, but defensively she gets hit in return far more than she lands. And against a good boxer, Jennifer Maia, I don't like that. So I do have a bet on Jennifer Maia for 1.5 units at minus 150. And I do like that in this matchup. Now, this matchup does tempt me to actually play the under just because of how wild this price tag has gotten. We're looking at the over 2.5 for Araujo and Maia at minus 500. Just out of value, looking at the under 2.5 at that plus 375 number. So many things could go wrong here. You could get like an arm bar from either of these two BJJ black belts from guard. You could get some sort of an injury, some sort of an TKO finishing sequence if one girl gets really tired. It just from a pure numbers, I want to play that under 2.5, but I just can't bring myself to do it. It's a Jennifer Maia fight. It's probably going to go to the scorecards, but have you ever seen an over 2.5 at minus 500 like this? It's just insane. But that's where we're at. So give me Jennifer Maia to win by decision. And finally, we made it to our main event of the fight night at UFC Vegas 81. We've got a featherweight bout for potentially 5 rounds between Edson Barboza and Sodiq Yusuff. So Sodiq Yusuff, the young prospect at 13-2 as a pro, only 30 years old. He's 7 years younger than Edson Barboza at 37, who represents one of the better kickers, one of the more athletic strikers, one of the better Muay Thai specialists in the UFC out of the lightweight division and the featherweight division, where he's been for his last 6 fights. Barboza's been in the league for like 12 years now, always comes in great shape, and he's got the potential to end the fight very early with precise striking, good spinning attacks, good knees, good elbows up close, and some decent boxing. He just finished Billy Q in round 1, who's notoriously tough, and just with a very sharp knee, he took any opportunity that Billy Q was going to give him in that fight and got the round 1 knockout as an underdog. So Edson Barboza, there's a lot to like. And if you watched my my main event breakdown video I posted earlier this week, I am still picking Sodiq Yusuff to win this fight. The money line right now is Sodiq Yusuff is the slight favorite at minus 161 on BetOnline, plus 141 the slight underdog for Edson Barboza. And I could even see value on the Barboza side by the numbers, but just my prediction, what I think is going to happen is Sodiq Yusuff is going to weather the early storm of Barboza, stay safe and counter him effectively in round 1 and 2, maybe even slow down the pace by crashing the pocket and getting some cage wrestling and some time wearing him down in the clinch. But as rounds 3, 4, and 5 go on, if Yusuff can survive the early part of this fight, I think he wins those rounds and wins a decision or maybe even a late finish in this one. Edson Barboza has got very good explosive potential, but with that fast twitch muscle fiber always carries the cost of having less output and less pop on those punches in the later parts of a fight. Barboza is a guy who also has some lacking durability in a lot of spots. Even early when he was in his prime, getting dropped by jabs from guys like Donald Cerrone, getting hit and cut off. The cage was cut off against like Jamie Varner in his first loss. We're going back pretty far, but Justin Gaethje, no shame in that one. Giga Chikadze, though, only a couple of years ago, wearing him down with some better kickboxing in that fight. So there's been some spots where Barboza has gotten dropped by very short strikes, and obviously smothering wrestling game plans work against him as a Muay Thai one-dimensional guy. But Sodiq Yusuff carries that unpredictability as a younger man at 30 years old. Still a lot more to prove to us. So far, he looks like a very aggressive striker with good countering ability and a very good gas tank to move forward, march a guy like Edson Barboza down, and just kind of outpace him as the fight goes on. So I could see Barboza having finishing potential in rounds 1 and rounds 2, and potentially even winning those rounds. But as Yusuff goes on, starts cage wrestling, uses those clinch weapons and clinch strength, maybe lands some takedowns, and then just has the better cardio and just lasts and paces himself out over 5 rounds. I could see Sodiq Yusuff doing that here. The question marks are just all on his side. Will he wrestle? Will he do the right thing? Will he come back in a healthy way after being gone for about a year due to some herniated disc issues in his lower back? So not something I want to get behind with my money. So even though I'm picking Sodiq Yusuff to win, I could see a lot of good arguments to pick Barboza, especially Barboza by finish in rounds 1 or rounds 2. Those props might be juicy here as well. Or potentially live betting Sodiq Yusuff after the dangerous part of the fight is over. You get a good plus number on him if Barboza wins in round 1 and round 2, like I predict he will. So, yeah, give me Sodiq Yusuff to win. I think he does so by decision. Okay, so there you have it, you guys. All the fights broken down for UFC Vegas 81, Yusuff versus Barboza. So there's some betting spots I like that I pointed out, but there's also some underdogs I think could come through. This is, although I picked a lot of favorites here and only picked a couple underdogs, it's a very volatile fight night card in my opinion. Obviously, Daniel Lacerda is a round 1 monster. He could come through. Considering his money line, that wouldn't be the most strange thing in the world. Looking at Darren Elkins, obviously, TJ Brown not the most trustworthy favorite. Elkins could maybe pull off something. Who else we got? Irina Alekseeva, another one who's a very physical girl, even though I think Dixon's the more well-rounded fighter and more technical. Alekseeva, as I mentioned, round 1, she's a wild card. She could come through and pull something off. Wouldn't be surprised if she comes through as an underdog here. So there's some scattered dogs I could see coming through. I mean, even in the main event, we talked about Barboza with crazy experience and crazy finishing potential early. So could be a lot of dogs barking on this card, but if the favorites do their thing, I think we could get these picks right and cash some of our bets. So go ahead and hit me in the comments with your favorite picks for this card, any bets or betting ideas that you have. Let me know. I'd love to hear it, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.